This episode is a featured production from our co-branded partner, Procore Technologies, a global leader in project management software. This content is part of a Procore series of episodes where we get guests from across the country and talk about technology and construction underneath the Procore umbrella. Enjoy the episode.
Okay, welcome back to the Atlantic Construction Podcast. Very excited today to have with us Melissa Heidmiller, talent acquisition specialist with Procore Technologies, formal partner of ours, and Melissa is joining us today from the GTA area. Very pleased to have you with us, Melissa. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. It's really fun to get to chat with you and connect with the construction audience and share some insights and hopefully get something good.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like I was saying before we went on air, it's plus 33 here this afternoon in Halifax. So definitely the nicest day. Good start to June, minus the forest fires that we have out this way currently. But we're hoping that we can get those under control. But how's the weather?
So was that Roxel products?
You know what?
Back
We're
then?
somewhere around the same temperature. I never want to be one to complain about warm weather because I'm the kid that, I'm not hot unless it's like 28 degrees outside. But we have our air conditioner cranked right now and I'm sitting with socks and I'm freezing. And I'm like, why am I doing this?
So yeah, today we're going to talk a lot about, company culture and brand development and these sorts of things. And obviously you've got a long history and a long career in this. You've had your time at Wilfrid Laurier University and in communications and experience with career coaching and brand development. Your current position with marketing and talent acquisition with Procore. Maybe we can start and kind of just, go through a little bit of your journey in your story, and then kind of we'll lead into to some specific topics around Procore.
Yeah, definitely. So my story is kind of one of those in my 20s, go to school, figure you've got the dream of what you want to do. And I think like so many people, I bumped around and, finally one day I was like, wow, I could really use a career coach. And in that process of that exploration, figured out, oh, that's the direction that I want to go in, help people figure out what is it they want to do? How do they land into those careers where they feel good about and they want to stay in, or how do you recognize when it's time to change? So shifted my career path in that and spent a lot of time helping people figure that out, helping people kind of recognize what matters to them, why it's important, how that connects with their careers. And then, of course, as any career coach would do, I start doing all that stuff to myself, realizing when it's time to change. And I had set myself up in business, and my childhood best friend, she had come to me for career coaching, and she ended up doing social media management. And I was like, that's the coolest thing in the world. And then I switched gears to partner with her, where we worked with small businesses, helping them understand their value as a brand. How do they communicate that and get that out across on social channels? But then COVID happens, right? My brain fried on it. There's right? Started looking at what my next steps were, and kind of came back to that idea of how much I enjoy helping people make those decisions in their careers, and that brought me to Procore, working with our talent brand team, helping to communicate what a company is, what the value of a company is, what it is like working there, and how you can build and grow somewhere. Getting that communicated out to a talent audience to help people decide if that's where they want to be. So that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I mean that's. Thank you for sharing that. It's a tough thing to do a lot of times to navigate. I think for people, with professional careers and wanting to make a change and understanding what direction to head in, and then, even once that decision is kind of established, what companies would I fit with, whether it's core values or their brand or the culture, There's a lot of different things taken into perspective, and to get that your life's work or your place where your passion can grow, and it's tough to do on your own. I've been in that position, like you said, you yourself, and without somebody there, not to necessarily hold your hand, but just to kind of be that extra guidance and help you navigate that. It's very tough terrain, especially in the competitive market and all those sorts of things,
exactly.
Right?
And we're always evolving in our careers. What we need 5 years ago is probably very different from what we need today, right? So when we're looking at the direction that we're going or the spot that we're in, it's that constant self-awareness. If you can have the self-awareness to recognize what those needs are, recognize what your values are, what your priorities are, and how does that fit in, one, with what you're doing, but two, with the company as well, right? So many times in my past in career coaching, talking with people, and we start like digging in on, where's the discontentment coming from? So often it's because there's that misalignment between those current needs and what the company's offering them, right? Sometimes it's literally just, a shift in the role within a company, or sometimes it's exiting the entire industry, or just finding a new employer, or finding a new boss.
Yeah, I mean, as you say that, like I think of things in my mind in the past, whether it's you're on site, maybe in a leadership role on a construction site as a foreman or a site super, and then, maybe, your temperament or something, is causing you to think like, I'm just not into this, or with the many other variables, and then maybe, like you said, it's just a pivot within the same company as maybe a project management role. You're kind of stepping back, you're a little more of a 30,000 foot view, and it's a little different. It's still the same industry, same company, but and that can be like a real fresh start, right, for somebody if they can see how to connect those dots.
And I'll admit it's not easy to do it on your own. If someone has the option to work with someone, go for it. But even talk to your best friend, talk to your partner, talk to a trusted colleague within your organization that you can just start exploring the conversation, and just those little bits honestly go so far.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, there's so many different variables, like even, a lot of times what people want to do is ensure that there's room to grow, whatever their position is, right? Like, where can I be in 2 to 5 years if I take this role now, and what, does it align with my, my vision? Does the company have those kind of opportunities? And then, like you said, training, it's just constantly, like you said, ever rapidly changing. And if you're not like keeping up to date on technology, on the construction site, or from the tech side, or more on the consulting side, like, there's just so many fast moving parts that it's tough to keep up with, right? It's almost like you need that guidance just to stay on top of what it is you should be educating yourself on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we can never predict what the future is going to be. We can never predict those changes in technology that's going to come and potentially disrupt our roles in whatever capacity. But like you're saying, if we can look that 5 years down the road and say, well, where do I generally want to be? And identifying those skills that you need to grow, whether they're the physical hard skills or whether it's the soft skills, look at the opportunities of how you're going to get there. And oftentimes when we can build relationships, whether if it's a formal mentor, or just someone who's in a role or two above, just having those relationships and keeping an open dialogue with them, learning from them, from their experiences, how have they grown and developed, what can they suggest to you to go down that path, even asking the tough question of, can you tell me about, what are the gaps that you see with me that I need to fill, right? Where they might have that insight on what you need to do so that you can keep moving forward.
Yeah, so sometimes like there's some tough questions there you need to ask yourself, and kind of be accepting of, like, where's my weak spots on my resume? What do I need to work on, and be willing to take the feedback. Yeah. So with your role with Procore, like, are you involved a lot as far as, obviously with market and talent acquisition? Are you involved a lot in like the formal recruiting process where you're kind of constantly circling a certain network, searching for, potential candidates, even if a role is maybe not out there yet, but it probably will be, just kind of always having a filter full.
Mhm.
Maybe just kind of give us a little perspective on your
Yeah,
day-to-day
so my role is my role sits alongside our talent acquisition team. So I'm a senior talent marketing manager. So I support our recruiters in their efforts. A lot of what I do can include working with them on outreach. So how are they reaching out to different audiences? So we'll create personas of the kinds of individuals that we want to attract, right? So we look at the company overall. We say, who are our top performers, who are our mid performers, who are the kinds of people that we want to attract, what are the qualities, the capabilities that they have, what are the behaviors that these people display, and we create essentially that persona. So then we're creating content. So that's really where I step in. I'm creating the content that is going to be appealing to those people, right? And then I'm enabling our recruiters so that they can confidently go out there. They can reach out to those people. They can say hopefully the right things to them to get them interested, and even working with them to look at where are you then reaching out to those individuals, right? Are you just searching on LinkedIn, or are you just going to this website? Are you reaching out to specific communities where they're spending time and hanging out and trying to build those relationships and get it going? So it's kind of the enablement piece with them that most of my focus is.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like, I think whether you're talking or listening in from a small business, as a technical term, if it's under 500 employees or under 100 employees, or it's a corporation, like your explanation there just kind of gives an interesting kind of perspective or view into, like, how layered that process is. And you don't just end up with these great teams that are acting like a well-oiled machine accidentally, right? Like you're what you're looking for. You're extracting the research from your talent acquisition division. It's bleeding into your content. You're creating content specifically for those kinds of people, be it the talent and backgrounds that they have, but also like the personalities that seem to be able to work together and whatnot. So it's interesting to see the depth that goes into that to keep that filter full. And
so like when we think of
forward.
it from an organizational aspect, right? You have your company, you have the culture, you have the thing that you do and how you do it, and that's what attracts your talent, right? Because they're like, let's say Procore, oh, I want to work for Procore because, I've heard that, it's people first company. I've heard that they really encourage work-life balance. I hear that there's great career growth opportunities. They offer lots of training, and that our values of openness, optimism, and ownership are ingrained in so many of the decisions and the moves that we make. So you take that and you sell that story, hopefully the accurate story. You sell that story to the audience. So then the people that are out there that are attracted to that kind of organization, that's who's going to start coming in, right? Versus if you're just like, oh, we're this company and, we do this in the market and we give you vacation. Then, you're going to attract a completely different kind of audience. Probably a lot of the people that do what's called the spray and pray. They're just applying to anything and everything and not really considering as the individual, what do I want in my life? What do I want in my career? How do I want my whole life to look, and consider how career fits into the whole life, right? You're pulling in people that aren't going to do what you want them to do. They're not going to fit into they're not going to come into the alignment of what everyone else within the organization is doing, if you have that culture where people are living and breathing the values and treating each other with the respect that you're wanting them to.
So, and aside from, having having a system, the finesse of attracting those kinds of people that share those core values, like, what are some practical steps that you would see taken, whether it's like a typical process of hiring where, it's resume, interview 1, 2, how do you kind of make firm the decision that, okay, this person's core values don't align, even though, they have a great resume, they're not going to fit. And then how hard is it to sacrifice that when you see like, hey, this person, has a really good resume, but I can just tell, on the core value side, that's got to be tough at times, right? I mean, not to diminish core values, because they're everything for longevity.
Yeah.
It's
there's no
right?
there's no magic bullet to it, right? And every organization, you try as hard as you want, as hard as you can to put that message out there, to weave, let's say, weave your values and your culture into your hiring process, so that hopefully as people are coming in, you're getting the right people. They're getting the person who doesn't align, they're going to get the red flags along the way of saying, oh, you know what, I don't really want to work here. I don't like the messages that they're giving me. When you're in that interview process, then when the organization, as you're creating it, you want to be really strategic about the questions that you're asking. You want to be asking very particular questions that are going to dig into how they're responding, right? So, you've got your, let's say, traditional questions of, tell me about a time when you did this, right? But if you can look at positioning those questions to wrap around some of the values that you have in your company, then you're gonna start to learn a little bit about that person. So, like, let's just say, how many people, work in company and we have silos, right? It's one of the most frustrating things in a large company. And if you're working really hard in your organization to not have silos, to make sure that you have cross communication, you have collaboration, ask some of your questions built around that, right? Find out how does whatever individual, how have they behaved in the past when it comes to leading a project, working with a team, sharing information or whatnot, right? So you can start to learn, is this the person that really thrives in a silo, or is this the person that really wants to build that cross collaboration? And, if you get through the interview process and you end up hiring someone, you're like, well, you're not really who you thought you were. Chances are likely within a year anyways, that person's going to leave, because they themselves, they're realizing that there's a disconnect, and they're going to get frustrated on the job, and they're going to start looking for other opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned, I think, the 3 core values of Procore, I think, just several minutes ago. Can we kind of just chat about those a little bit? How does Procore land at those core values? Kind of, what goes into the process? Is there meetings, formally with upper management, yearly or quarterly, to say, like, we might be shifting a little bit on this one, or just a little bit of background?
So our values, and you're gonna have to forgive me because I'm probably gonna get my dates wrong, but we set our values, I think, somewhere around 2015-ish, maybe, is when we set them. And it was more that notion of looking at, how do we behave and how do we want people to behave? How do we want to treat each other? How do we want to build respect amongst our colleagues, and how do we want to build that community? And that's how Tui and the team ended up with ownership. So that notion of, we're still kind of feels like we're in that startup phase, even though the company's 20 years old, right? It's still we're doing exciting things. We're building new things. We're constantly improving the product, right? So when we look at that idea of ownership, it's that no matter the project that you're taking responsibility for what you're doing, and you're going to dive on it, right? You're not just going to say, like, well, I tried and here we go. And that's one of those behaviors that we constantly want to see from our employees, is that they're going to latch onto something and give it their all, right? And then that takes us over into openness, of that idea that we can speak up. We can be in an environment where it is perfectly safe to speak up and know that our voice is going to be heard and respected by those around us. We don't always have to agree with each other, but it's that notion of, okay, I see a challenge, or I see a problem, or I don't understand something. I know that I can ask, and there's not going to be a repercussion on it, right? So then if we start hiring people who don't live by that value, we have a really kind of fun I say it's fun, internal saying, and it's no brilliant jerks, right? That's one of our like rules of thumb, rules. Yeah. Right. Don't hire the brilliant jerks. And funny enough, when the brilliant jerks do make their way in, they honestly, they don't last very long, right? Because those values are so prevalent in the way that we're working. And then that last one of optimism is just, it's just be forward looking, like sure, challenges might come up, but we're going to learn how to roll with them and always keep moving forward. So then going forward as a company with those values, it's checking in, are we sticking to them? Do they still make sense? I don't know how often Tui and everyone meets up to check on if it's yearly or not, or if it's part of our yearly strategic planning. But it's the reflecting backwards. Have we stuck to these in the past year? Do they make sense? And then going forward, do they need to shift at all, or can we continue on it? Right. I mean, like, I know I've certainly worked for an organization in the past where I think I was there for about 3 years, and partway through they did change our values. And it was just the communication of like, the company has changed. We're a larger organization. We're offering different services now, and it doesn't really make sense anymore that we say this is a value. Instead, it's this, and they give that iteration of it and the justification of it, and essentially, how does everyone feel about that? For the most part, everyone is pretty happy. So
yeah, no, that's great, and that gives a lot of context. I'm wondering, like, if people are listening and say, they might be from a competitor of Procore, or they might be in a totally different tech space, or a totally different industry, or in the construction industry, in any of 1,000 different scopes of work on any side of the fence. Let's say there's other companies out there that are hiring the brilliant jerks, as you say, or their values just are on the opposite end of yours, right? Like it's comical, but in a sense, like so what, can you speak even from your personal experience or on behalf of the organization, whichever works, to say like, no, these values actually improve our output. These values actually impact the company, not just improving our financial output, but the quality lifestyle of our workers and the satisfaction of our workers, and that kind of thing, right? Because I think it'd be interesting to cross-reference it on opposite values from the ones you just mentioned, which some companies are closer operating more on that side of things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not, because you've created such an open space for people to thrive, right?
Okay, so when you think about the values of the company, whatever they are, right? Because you're going to have some organizations where those values are a little bit more, let's say, hard-lined, right, rather than open and more community-driven. When you think about, I guess you want to look at the objectives that you're setting for your organization and what is it that you really want to achieve. So if you're looking at, let's say, like, you want hyper growth and you want like massive sales right away, do you really want to be creating what are the key values that you want to put in there to attract those people who are going to be super hungry to make the sale, the people that are going to be super driven to, let's say, work the 80 hours a week that you want them to? And you might burn through people, or maybe you're going to get the people that they actually thrive in that environment, because there are people that do thrive in that environment, right? So then you're looking at what are the values then within that environment that are going to be important to that. So there's still going to be there's going to be that competitive aspect, but then you have to look at then how are you building the camaraderie between those people, so that you don't end up with people that just get really upset with each other all the time, because they're always trying to like the one-upmanship and all that, right? So okay.
Yeah, well, no, it makes sense, and I think one of the things that you're going to be thinking about always as an ownership group is retention, right? And I mean, when you have certain core values, I mean, it's a far better scenario for long-term retention, long-term return on your investment of time and energy and money and those kind of things too. So there's an argument for both sides.
There totally is. And I mean, business needs change all the time too, right? You're always going to go into a new period of what your business needs. And sometimes the people that served you well 5 years ago are not going to be the people that serve you well right now. So I think that kind of goes back to what you were asking before about, how do you evaluate if those values are still relevant? And it's looking at, well, what's the business need right now?
100%. So right now in the terrain in the industry across the country, and we'll say North America, I mean, and other places for that matter that I'm certainly not aware of, but labor shortage is a big thing. So how do you sort of combat that in your position and in working with talent acquisition? Like how does that play into kind of the strategy and the decision making, just knowing that a lot of these positions are getting tougher and tougher to fill with the amount of projects, the amount of manpower needed on both site and prelim construction and tech, and it's a challenging time, I'm sure, for you and your team.
The labor shortage, and I was thinking about this earlier on, between looking at construction and looking at tech, I think that we do have some similar challenges, particularly when it comes to, let's say, attracting new audiences to work for us, right? So if we look at it from a diversity aspect, how are we looking to educate other groups than who we typically hire, right? Or who our typical employee is? How do we look to educate other groups to say, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do, these are the kinds of opportunities, and this is why you can come here and feel like you belong in this organization and in this industry. And that belonging piece kind of comes back to like the culture and the values, right? So are you creating an organization where let's just say where women want to come in and work? I mean, in tech, now this stat is American versus Canadian, because it's always so hard sometimes to find those Canadian stats. In tech, I don't know.
Why
I'm
is
like,
that,
come on, Canadians, get with it.
I said, why is that, eh?
So the US stat for women working in tech is, I think it's around 32%, which Procore, we're at 38%. But women in construction in Canada, I got that stat, I think is it like 11 or 12% or something like that. And then actually like women on the job site is like 5% or something. So and then of course there's other groups to be exploring, whether it's newcomer groups, whether it's indigenous populations, whether we're looking at LGBTQ populations, etc., right? Looking at what are you doing not just to attract these groups, but what are you doing to retain them as well, right? So every individual has unique needs, but then when we can, put people into their categorized groups, there's common needs within those. So how's an organization meeting those needs? How are they serving them so that they want to stay? And then, doing some of those things. So like, let's just say, take mat leave, for example. Bringing in women, that's going to be a common need, would be mat leave. So then, you start providing that, well, I mean, of course you have to provide it, but, making it so that people feel comfortable taking their mat leave and coming back from it, and asking for the flexibility of like, I got to take my kid to the doctor's today, or, can I adjust my schedule so that I start at this time so that I can get my kid to daycare? Then that starts opening up the doorway to say to the dads, so that they can start feeling like, hey, you know what, it is okay if I ask for that little bit of flexibility, or it is okay if I ask, to take my paternity leave so that I can, have that time with my new child, and my wife can go back to work early if she wants to.
I've seen, local companies around here, and these are companies who are hiring internal labor. So, people are getting creative with, acquiring talent from, yes, immigrant workers, but whether it be from Syria on one hand, or from other places in the Middle East, or from, from all over really. And, it could be farm workers, could be carpenters, could be, so they're trying to build crews of immigrant workers. And, so that's one way. You mentioned women in the trades and indigenous people. And, I think about a tech company like Procore, and, there's so many tech companies out there that are serving so many different services, on the tech side. And, there could be lots of highly experienced, talented people that just haven't considered construction as an option. And I'll relate that to like a lot of times what we get on our show and our media platform is like, people in the industry just wanting to shed light on what it's actually like to be in the industry, so that, those 14, 15, 16-year-olds in high school or going to university or in engineering or thinking about architecture, or maybe they have a desire to be out in construction as a project manager, but they don't really understand what it's like, or they just haven't been exposed to it. And, that it is it's not just a high paying opportunities, but great job, challenging, very respectable. There, it's or they might not have thought of that, and they might have thought of tech and something, IT on a totally different side, or, maybe it's that they were thinking about law school or something else, or, but a lot of these people, could flourish in the construction industry, on the management side and the tech side. And I think like if we can do a better job, and I'm sure that this is part of the motive for a large corporation like Procore, is to with your content, like you mentioned earlier, which is similar to a lot of what our motive is to just to shed light on, the opportunities that are out there for people that maybe just have a blockage, like just have never even thought about the construction side of things, because that word can be very broad, right? And there's so many. Does that make sense? Does that resonate?
I think when we look at let's say younger generations right now, and we asking ourselves, how are we educating them about the opportunities that are out there? My sister-in-law, which I thought was really cool, she's recently just started a new job with a company whose name I can't remember right now. But anyways, she was working for apprenticesearch.com. And she would travel around all the way across Canada, going to different conferences, speaking at different events. She would go into schools, all these things to educate kids about apprenticeship and about the trades, right? So obviously that's not the only program like that that's out there. But, it's looking at, as an industry partner, whether like you're the construction industry or whether you're, the construction tech company like Procore, looking at what's in our communities that we can get connected with, that we can help to influence, that we can help to get that voice out there to hit these different audiences, to let them know of what's out there, right? When we think about the stereotype, when someone's like, well, if I go work in construction, it's that they're probably thinking of the labor intensive aspect, and they're thinking it's the long hours, it's going to be so hard on my body, and is this really something I can do for my whole life, right? They're not necessarily thinking of everything that goes into the construction industry. They're not thinking about the what it takes to run the company. They're not thinking about the architects and the engineers. They're not thinking about all the individual kinds of contractors and all those, the whole everything that goes into it, right? So if someone is, let's just say they're thinking, I want to go into finance, they might just start thinking about banking, right? Or insurance, as opposed to thinking, wow, I could go work for in the finance department of a construction company. Right. So I think it really comes down to, we'll say, the individual ownership of the company, to get connected with their community, to understand what are the resources that are out there that they can latch onto to get engaged, but then also the individuals within an organization, right? If you're passionate about what you do, don't be afraid to say it, right? Don't be afraid to tell people about it. Don't be afraid to go volunteer and do something and talk to grade 7 students, right? And tell them about what life is like in what you're doing, so that you can start to get people thinking about it from an earlier age. I mean, if I think about my parents' generation, right? And I'll say that, you know, they would have a stigma against their kids going into construction and going to the trades, because that's where so many of them were. And they're like, well, I want better for my kid. I don't want you to do that. And you're like, but hold on. This is still an excellent career. Like, it's very fulfilling. You're doing something that makes such an impact on the world around you. Why wouldn't you want to go in that direction? So there's a lot of challenges that you're fighting when you're going against stereotypes and stigma that could be passed down from parents to kids. But if we just get our voice out there through the initiatives that are already existing, going into schools, getting connected, let's even say with employment centers, and maybe even ones that are specific to newcomer organizations, then you know, that's just all these tiny little entry points that are out there to get that word.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. And you know, it's not like these things aren't happening; they are. It's just it's a long shift, you know, to see the kind of the fruits of the turnaround of those efforts,
Yeah.
right? So, maybe we can talk a little bit about like various career paths specifically to Procore. I mean, obviously, you know, there's all kinds of different positions that Procore would be offering out of your, you know, your headquarters in Toronto, but across the country. You know, what are in your mind or for your team some of the career paths that, you know, are really meaningful, not that any more than others, but that are on the forefront right now for Procore moving forward in the tech side?
So I'll say with Procore, one of the what I find to be funny, one of the funny things is that so many people, they think we're a construction company. They don't think that we're a technology company. So it's always they're like, actually, we're tech, and it's always the fun to educate people on that aspect. But we get so many people from the construction industry that come to Procore because they've used the product and they love the product, and you know, they've come to a point in their career where they realize they want to shift into something different. So I'm going to say one of our most like roles that gets slammed like nobody's business is SPC. I always get it wrong. Senior product consultant? No, something like that. SPC, whatever it is.
Maybe project? Would it be project consultant or product?
Oh man, I don't think we have any listed.
You want me to Google it just so we can find it?
I can probably find it, but anyway, so our SPC roles, and because it literally is, you know, someone from the construction industry who can offer their expertise back to the construction industry, right? These roles open, and we honestly probably keep them open maybe a maximum of a week because they just get slammed. They get absolutely slammed with applicants, which is amazing. But then it's also like, oh, I'm so sorry, we can't hire you all. So,
is it specialty contractor?
Yes,
specialty contractor? Is
specialty.
that it? Yeah. Google
I love
it.
So many people, they come in, they see like they see the roles of like, oh, I can consult on what I know, and they think that's the only entry point that they want to come in at. But you know, I have people that will reach out to me on LinkedIn and they ask about what can I do at Procore, and my answer is always, well, don't ask me what you can do at Procore. Ask yourself what you can do at Procore. Do you want to get into customer service? Do you want to get into that ongoing support with the construction audience? Do you want to get into sales? Do you want to get into pre-sales? Do you want to, you know, leverage your knowledge and expertise so that you can help you can help to revolutionize the industry and, you know, get them on that digital platform, be part of that by bringing them there. You know, so it's kind of that question of what are you more interested in? What aspect of it are you more interested in? That's where the majority of people come in. They're going into either sales or they're going into one of our customer support roles, which, you know, kind of, we have so many different job titles here. I'm always like, what is that?
Yeah, there's a lot of different
Yeah,
titles,
but
right? Yeah.
we've definitely had people even coming into the engineering side where they coming from construction, they've gone back to school, they've taken like an intensive course on how to be a developer or something like that, and then they're looking to get that foot in the door here on that side as well. So I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities. When we look at Procore, yes, we absolutely love people that are coming in with construction industry because then you know exactly who you're talking to and why the product is so valuable. But I mean, of course, it's not it's not a prerequisite, right? I mean, I don't come from construction. I was like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, yeah, there's so much
Mhm.
opportunity there, and such a those customer support roles. I mean, it's
Mhm.
so crucial, right? Like whenever you have a customer that's using Procore and for some of these complex projects, and just constant communication and support, and of course, it's going to help if you understand the stresses and the thought patterns, and what
Yeah.
they care about as contractors and stuff. So, but then if you're in a sales role or marketing or on the IT side or developing side, I mean, it's a totally different. It's a vast landscape,
Yeah,
right? It's a lot of
it really
different.
is. I totally drink the Procore Kool-Aid. Like I love this company so much, and I love the people in the organization. And one of the things that I constantly notice about our employees is that we really do care about the customer that we're serving. We really do care about that market and audience. And people are always looking at ways of, well, how can I help you a little bit more? And what can I do just that little bit more for you? And at one of our most recent all hands, Tui was sharing a story of one of our employees, TJ, who I've never met him in person, but I love this guy because he's just like the biggest heart kind of guy. He's one of our sales engineers. So he was a friend of his, their son, I believe their son was in the hospital and in there for a while getting some treatment. And there was a construction site across the road. And the kid is just at the window watching the whole time. So TJ's like, oh, well, just tell me, can you see a sign or something of who the company is? And sure enough, it's Procore customer and it's one of his customers. So he reaches out to his contact and he's like, hey, my buddy's kid is, on X floor, this window in, and he's just having a great time watching you guys. And it's really raising his spirits while he's in the hospital. Can you just wave at him or something on Tuesday? Well, like, wouldn't you know it? They make a sign, the guys on the site, they make a sign specific for this kid, and they're like, hi Timmy, or whatever his name is. And then they actually sent some of their guys over to the hospital to the kid's room to have a chat with him. They invited him over after hospital time was done, invited him over to the site, gave him a tour, and it just like, makes the kid's whole life for this experience, right? And that story is just like, that is Procore in a nutshell. That is the people of Procore in a nutshell, is that we're always saying, how can I make somebody's life better?
Yeah. Wow. That's such a
Yeah.
feel good story, and bodes so well for the industry as a whole. Thanks for sharing that. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the collision event and TUI kind of springboarding that event, and what it means, and just a little about it for the
Yeah, so
listeners.
this is pretty exciting. So there's a tech conference that's happening in Toronto called the Collision Conference, and it's one of the largest tech conferences out there. And Tui is going to be speaking at it, which is really cool. He's going to be on a panel with the co-founder from Motive, and then also with someone from Forbes, who's a tech contributor. And they're going to be talking about, I love the title, it's called Make the Physical Economy Sassy Again. And really what they're going to be talking about is how can tech be used to better serve industries that are essentially the physical economy, right? So looking at the more of those labor intensive industries like construction, like agriculture, like automotive. So they're just going to dive into that, explore what it's about, and kind of help to continually drive that message that one, we're always working so hard to put out there, but just get that across.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a great event. I'm sure that someone like Tui or your founder and CEO of Procore, a global company, it's probably very hard to tie him down. But you mentioned a couple of meetings or where you've met him, and like, could you tell us a little bit about
Tui,
Tui?
He's like the mythical man, right? You always hear about him, that he's very humble. He's like the salt of the earth kind of guy. He's very kind. He'll sit down with you and have that conversation like like he's known you forever. And having the opportunity, I got to meet him maybe like a month, 2 months ago, I think. That was legit the experience with him. It was really refreshing to see someone at the helm of such a large organization who he walks his talk, right? Like he's not someone that thinks that he's a level above everyone else. He really is that open guy, and he's constantly recognizing the work that everyone does at Procore, and he loves shouting people out. Actually, one of our orientation specialists, Ashton, she's pretty much anybody that comes into Procore, you're going to meet Ashton. And he was giving a talk in our Toronto office, and he literally called her out, and he's like, and then Ashton, he said something really great about her. So I'm just like sending her a message. I'm like, by the way, Tui just gave you a shout out. And she's like, oh, Tui. I'm like, that's just the guy that he is. He really values his relationships with the employees, and he really values his relationships with people in the construction industry, and making sure that everyone's seeing the same guy. Everyone is seeing the same Tui, and recognizing the authenticity of who he actually is.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Melissa. I know we could talk about so many things. We're probably getting close to wrapping things up here, but I'm wondering what are your thoughts on representing and working for a large corporation right now with Procore on the marketing and talent acquisition side of things, and with your different experiences throughout your career in career coaching and brand development and marketing and such. If there's listeners tuning in, and as an entrepreneur myself, kind of relating the stories you're telling and some of the topics you're talking about from your end for myself, at what point does a company, and could be completely subjective, not that there's an objective answer here, but at what point does a company start to think about these things, company culture? I mean, if you're trying to build something from the ground up, a lot of people would think, well, that's fine to spend that, time and energy when you have these different departments and you have a major, global corporation. But me, I just have, 5 employees or 100 employees or 20. But I have a feeling, it could be more important than you might think, right? And a lot of people maybe don't have a lot of processes. They're just kind of filling a few positions here and there, and it's tough to stay on top of all that when you don't have structure. But any thoughts on, the importance of core values, even for any type of company, be it big or small, labor intensive contracting or consulting, design, build? I think it's something that maybe doesn't get enough attention. A lot of owners, live and die by it, and it's at the heart of their business. But any thoughts on, like, for smaller companies, like how they, the importance of it for them, even though they don't have a vast operation yet, a large company.
So no matter the size of the organization, whether you're 5 people or whether you're 5,000 people, right? I think it's always coming back to just understanding, how do you want to do business and how do you want people to know you, right? So whatever it is that you are desiring in that behavior and in the response from your market, from your audience, whether it's a talent audience or whether it's your customer audience. You want that, you need to show it, right? You can't just say, this is who we are. You constantly have to show it with proof points, right? So when it's coming to selling to your customers, how are you proving to them that you're going to do what you're saying that you're going to do? So then when you're looking at a talent audience, how are you proving to them that, whether you're 5 people, how are you proving to them that those 5 people that you guys work together as a team, or whether you're 5,000 people, that what's the promise that you're delivering? And the best way to do that is your employee stories, right? So, it's fun to be like, here's an employee spotlight, but getting your employees to be advocates for you, to communicate that, allowing them to be part of a process, part of allowing them to feel good about communicating with their network and with their audiences, and the people in their community about what their experience is like. So 5 people or 5,000, if you have 5 people, if you're a 5-person team and 2 people on that team are like, oh yeah, you know what, this isn't a great place, that's a pretty big percentage. But so the voice of the employee is what wins. So just like the voice of the customer is what wins, right? The customer is going to be the one that say, yeah, they do a terrific job, or they're going to be the one that says, actually, no, they don't. Your employee is the same. So you just always remember to treat your employees well, do what you say you're going to do, treat them the way that you want them to treat you and the way that you want them to treat your customers. And that's how you start building up that consistency of the experience and of the reputation to help to attract.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for that, Melissa. I think that's an interesting correlation. Like, it really is the same level of importance, even if it's, a much smaller operation, very same with an operation even as big and as vast and large as Procore. And I think probably a lot of people are accentuating, or they're putting out their core values, even subconsciously, whether they don't realize it or not, right? 'Cause it's interesting what you said about Tui as a CEO and a founder of a company like Procore. Sure enough, the values in the company are perfectly in line with his values of him as a person, as a human being when you meet him, and that's there's no mistake there, right? So I think a lot of people are probably, doing it whether or not they've put a lot of thought into it or not, but it's very interesting to get your thoughts on that. Is there anything else that you want to share with us on behalf of Procore, on behalf of the topics we've discussed here today, maybe that we haven't touched on? There's been a lot of talking points, but
yeah, I'll just add on there, when we're thinking about how are we communicating who we are as an organization to that talent audience, it's not something that we just do at a time when we have to hire, right? It should be something that you're doing constantly and consistently throughout the course of time. So, I mean, even when you're in a hiring lull, which I believe we're in a little bit of a lull right now, right? In construction, even though that lull is happening, it's even more important right now to be communicating out there that this is who we are. These are the opportunities that we have. This is the experience that you're going to have as an employee, so that when you get out of that lull and it's time to hire, you've made it so much easier for yourself to at that point, because you've been spending that time building up that awareness to that external audience, as opposed to, radio silence, and all of a sudden you've got that hiring spree happening, and then you're going to have people like, well, who are you and what is it like and why do I want to work for you, right? Because it's always, think about it from the aspect, take a moment and think for yourself. I'm going to go to apply for a job, and you're saying to yourself, what am I going to get out of it? That's what every single applicant is asking. what am I going to get out of it? So if we can tell them like constantly right from the get-go, what's in it for you, that then it makes that decision easier for them. So, regardless of what labor markets look like, the value of telling the experience of what it's like at your organization and employee is 100% all the time.
Wow, for sure. And something that just came to my mind too, and it just, for me personally, it's a unique journey within the construction industry. I'm not going to get into it and bore our listeners with my personal stories, but one of the things, I know what it's like to be on a job site and work on a job site, and as a carpenter, as a in the interiors trades, and one of the things that being in those positions on job sites, and I hope that we have listeners tuning in that are on job sites who work so hard and help actually build these buildings, boots on the ground. Much respect for these guys. It's nice when you get that affirmation, and they need to know that they're appreciated, right? Because it's such a different thing to be on the other side of the fence within the industry. Well, I can't think of better terms to use than blue collar, white collar, just to separate those two. But if those kinds of employees are listening in, they'll get a glimpse into, this is just one, topic of culture, core values, marketing, talent acquisition, looking ahead at, who are we? We need to hire, we need to prepare, we need to, think of the vast amount of energy that goes into the thought process of just what we've talked about today. That's not even to mention your estimating department or your other operations, or, so it's good for, on both sides, this constant mutual conversation when people are listening in, to get a glimpse into, hey, maybe some people think, your owner's driving around in a truck all day, and but actually, there's so much going on behind the scenes, and because it's a different world, yet we coexist right in the same space. I hope that conversations like this will work both ways. So it's like, oh geez, I never realized the thought that goes into on the other end, that goes into just staying prepared and keeping the outlook ahead of who are we, and filling important positions, and those kind of things. So I wanted to just mention that was kind of on my mind, just from being through a career journey on job sites, and then more into estimating, project management, and ownership, and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's been a great conversation. Really appreciate your time. I mean, Procore has just been Kimberly and the team, and Arabi, and all the others for us at Atlanta Construction Media and podcasts have been amazing. A great partnership for us, and it's easy to see the truth in everything that you're saying today. In our experience working with them, there's a lot of passion, and it's a great culture, great group to work with. And so on behalf of our team, I want to thank the Procore people, and you, Melissa, as well, for your time today.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a fun change of pace in my day to hop on this call with you. And anybody that knows Procore, hopefully, just hearing me talk about the way that our employees interact, I hope that if you have had experiences connecting with anyone here, I hope that you pick that up. I hope that you feel that vibe.
Awesome. Yes, let's hope for that, and hope that our listeners are tuning in. We'll give you a shout out, and awesome. Come your way for some future employment. Okay, take care.
All right, thanks,
cheers.
Ben. Bye.
Thank you, Melissa.